After Easter, I will be taking the first of my sabbatical trips, and more about that later. But I thought during this year, while I was doing some rest and rejuvenation, that the theme of rest for the congregation as a whole might be interesting to explore. And what better time to start than during the Lenten season? Typically a time we think that we are supposed to attend to some confession, some changing of our ways. Well, why not take on a little bit of Sabbath observance? Lent, as I said, is often about self-examination, but rest is also a form of discipline. A form of discipline. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But in our overworked, overscheduled, constantly electronically connected culture, rest does not come naturally to us anymore. It has to be chosen and guarded and practiced. Now, I know many of you are retired, and I have heard from many retired people this refrain like, I'm so busy now, I don't know how I ever managed when I had a job. We live in a culture that treats busyness as a badge of honor. It almost becomes a shorthand for self-importance, for usefulness, for self-worth. Now, this is one of those cases where I'm not really preaching to you, I'm preaching to myself. One of the hazards of ministry is not just that we are busy, but that we are so scheduled, so constantly at work, that we begin to boast about it in subtle and not so subtle ways when clergy gather one with the other. It's almost as if exhaustion were a point of faithfulness. But I have to admit, I like to be busy. It's just part of who I am. My favorite kind of vacation is not sitting on a beach. I prefer logging 10, preferably 18 miles a day, walking through the woods when I'm on vacation, exploring and covering the ground of wherever I am. It's squeezing every single hour out of a day to take in a new city. I'm so determined to do it all that my children jokingly call vacationing with me the Susie Death March. Finally, we modern Christians think of ourselves as so much wiser than our fusty ancestors. Sabbath is long gone. Gone with blue laws, gone with sports teams paying any attention whatsoever to religious observance of their members. We have given up on Sabbath not only in the sense of remembering to observe it, but also in the sense of remembering how rest has a holy component. And yet, Sabbath is not a light suggestion of Scripture. It's woven into creation itself. In Genesis, we hear God creating in 6 days and resting on the seventh. Even the holy considers rest a part of the rhythms of life. And then there's the other reason that Scripture gives us for Sabbath, which is ontological, rooted in who God created us to be. as you hear in today's passage from Deuteronomy, the people are told to remember the Sabbath because once they were slaves. Once they had to work all the time. They were at the beck and call of someone else. You see, rest is part of our essential freedom to be the people of God. We are not slaves, not to Pharaoh, not to the machinery of the economy, not to consumerism, not to productivity, not to the endless scroll on our phones that want our dollars and our attention. Sabbath, in this regard, is actually a weekly and subtle act of resistance. It's the quiet, stubborn declaration that despite the fact that pretty much every survey out there will call us consumers, that is not who we are. We are God's. We are free, we are God's. People often focus on what you're not supposed to do on the Sabbath, but the heart of it is what you are invited to do while having Sabbath rest. You are invited to slow down and enjoy making your food and then tasting it. You are invited to connect more deeply with family and with friends. You are invited to write a letter of appreciation to someone and send it off. You are invited to stare at a tree for a while, to take in its shape. You are invited to listen to the birds. You are invited to pray in whatever form that takes, word or wordlessly. You are invited to notice. And this is what we should heed. Simply not doing certain things is a type of choice as well. It's a choice about our attention to God and our attention to our own well-being, our own souls. Sabbath is this weekly act of resistance. It's the quiet and stubborn declaration that we belong to God. So it is so easy to surrender our precious downtime to things that are designed to fragment our attention. For instance, we can watch 30 minutes of news and hear almost nothing that we didn't hear before. You can watch 3 episodes of something on Netflix and wonder where the whole evening went. Lent invites us into a time of paying attention to the disciplines of faith. So why not make some sort of Sabbath observance part of our Lent? The traditional way would have been to set aside all of Sunday, but I would suggest if you could even find 2 hours in your week that you call Sabbath time, and avoid all those electronic things and just pay attention to your life, to what you're doing, to the people who love you, that would be a beautiful observance. I think also about this second scripture we heard today, Jesus saying to us, "Come to me, all you who are weary, all you who are carrying heavy burdens, come to me and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light," Jesus says. That image of yoke is an image of shared work, of animals bound together, moving in the same direction and carrying the same load. When we think in this troubled and difficult world that there is so much to do to fix it, it can feel overwhelming. But Jesus' voice comes to remind us that we are not alone. We are yoked to Jesus, our Christ, who is pulling that burden with us. To be yoked to Christ is to stop imagining that we are hauling these burdens alone. It is to let Jesus set the pace and to feel the steady pull of Jesus' strength alongside our own. It is living into the spiritual discipline of seeing how Jesus is our companion along the way. So Sabbath teaches us that we are not slaves, and yoking ourselves to Jesus teaches us that we are not alone, not solitary. Now, most of the time when any of us feel overwhelmed, it is because we slip back into that all too American and individualized illusion that so much depends upon us, that we each one have something that we have to carry or fix or respond to, that we are essential. But in moments of prayer, if we can pause and imagine that Jesus is walking with us, if we can imagine consciously handing over some of what feels heavy, then we can feel a little lightness. We can trust that our worth is not measured by productivity. We can trust that Christ is already in the fields with us, doing the work of faith. So this Lent, let us do these essential tasks of finding a way to discipline ourselves towards an easier load and towards some rest. So we'll give some of our attention to Jesus, who walks beside us in all of our efforts. And we will give some attention to paying that deference to God's voice asking us to keep the Sabbath holy, to set aside some time for us to be none other than God's beloved. We are not alone. We belong to God. We are yoked to Christ.